Hello, the digital library I've chosen to cover for this project is the Lesbian Her Story Archive, or LHA as I'll be referring to it. This archive is located in New York City and has been running since 1979. They are focused on preserving and sharing the history of lesbians, although their collections are also relevant to other queer women. It is open to all, regardless of identity, though the website does emphasize that LHA supports the political struggles of all lesbians and wants to foster intergenerational understanding as the meanings of identities change over time. The mission statement states that the Lesbian Her Story Archives exist to gather and preserve records of lesbian lives and activities. This ensures future generations will have ready access to materials relevant to their lives. The LHA is a non-hierarchical collective that is not affiliated with other institutions and relies primarily on volunteers. Their collections come from donations and they have no paid staff members. This approach may not seem sustainable, but the LHA has been running on this model since its inception in the 70s. This digital library contains a wide variety of items, including T-shirts, documents, photos, videos, and audio recordings. While there is not a formal collection development policy on their website, they do indicate that their collections come mostly from donations, and a lot of them are in the process of being digitized. Not all the collections are completely online. For example, the documents and photos are still in the process of being added. But as they continue to develop their collections, the LHA will likely to start to include more born digital items. This collection is organized by type of material. For example, there are geographical files, zines, t-shirt collections, among many other categories. One example of a collection that is available online is the t-shirt collection. These shirts are available through a website called Airtable. The standard being used to organize the collections isn't really clear, but there are sets of metadata collected for each entry. The metadata includes things like physical location, ID, subject, design type, the location of the text, the shirt type, the color, and things of that nature. This digital library is a subset of what the LHA has in their physical collections. All of their collection types are listed and described online, but only some of them are available as digital libraries. The items in the digital libraries do include information about their physical locations, and this is so that they can help users find the actual objects at the archive. Access to this digital library is free to anyone that is interested in their collection. They do not restrict their collections as to only researchers or members of a particular community. Everyone's welcome according to the LHA's rules. It's not really a complicated example of online collections. There are very few search options. Most only give the user a simple search with no additional filters. The aim of the digital items does seem to be to draw people in to visit the archives in person in New York City. But all the collections are listed on the LHA website. A prospective user would likely find the items that interest them if they already know what they want to look for. For example, if they know they want to look for buttons or old magazines, things like that. But many of them are not completely digitized, and several are only held as physical items. So the digital library also serves as a guide to the information that the LHA has at its building. They do provide a place for reference assistance where you can send an email or send them a phone call and they'll get back to you. But they do ask that users be specific as possible to help ensure that the volunteers can provide quality information. They don't have a dedicated FAQ or chat functions. Last, we have the technology section. This is the section I was able to find the least amount of information on. I believe that this is likely due to the LHA being a small, donation-funded, volunteer-run organization that is still in the process of creating usable, accessible digital libraries. They likely just don't have the funding to engage in some of the really more elaborate digital library creation things that we maybe have seen with other digital libraries. The LHA uses its files on sites like Airtable, and it also works with a couple local institutes like the Pratt Institute. So their files are stored according to the guidelines of multiple organizations. Again, it's not clear what those guidelines are because it's not readily available online, but because it's on multiple websites and the metadata standards seem to be different, it seems like they're using different standards. The interface in all of these are very basic and they rely on very simple searches. There's not a lot of detail that you can go into. On mobile, even on Airtable, there's no search option. You can only really scroll through. Although I will say the AV collection hosted by the Pratt Institute is much easier to navigate. It's more like a traditional library or traditional digital library that you would see on a college website. Lastly, the importance of this digital library stems from its niche, underrepresented audience and the lack of other organizations engaged in collecting and preserving the history of queer women in the US. The items they have can be difficult to find, so having them all in a centralized location can help people find what they're looking for. Um, and that's all I have. So thank you for listening to my presentation. And if you have any questions, you can leave a comment. Or if you're interested in the Lesbian Her Story archives, I provided the website here on this last slide.